Thank you very much, Jo. Thank you for that lovely welcome. So I'm Suzanne, and when Howard asked me to talk about soft skills of coaching, my first thought was, oh, that's my favourite subject. So what I'd like to do in this hour, or whatever it happens to be, is share with you some general ideas based on some of my pet educational theories, tempered by my own experience over the years. And hopefully I'll send you away with some ideas and maybe some questions. But the main aim is that the ideas that we share tonight will spark your curiosity and be useful to you in developing your own coaching. So, who am I? Oh, it works. Amazing. Okay, so I'm mainly a level 2 coach and a coach educator, and I currently work as the coaching and volunteer officer for Scottish Orienteering, which involves overseeing the whole of our coach education programme, including tutoring, assessing and developing courses. In my former lives, I've been a secondary school teacher, an army education officer, an open university tutor, and after-school tutoring, mainly maths and kids with dyslexia. And what I found over the years is that my coaching has benefited from all the experience I've gathered over a lifetime of teaching. However, the converse is also true, and my teaching has certainly benefited greatly from my experience and my training as a coach. I've worked alongside some wonderful coaches over the years and they've always shared the benefit of their learning with me. Now, I always think that achieving a coaching award is very much like passing a driving test. The real learning starts once you get let loose on your own, except, of course, that in coaching, you're never on your own, because there's always a wealth of experience in our sport to be tapped into, and also a wealth of learning out there on the internet to be discovered. So I'm aiming this presentation at coaches, old and new, young and inexperienced and experienced, or at least those who have a passing interest in coaching. Now, as Jo said, if you do have any questions or anything that doesn't make sense, please do feel free to pop it in the chat, and Hugh and Jo and Howard, sorry, not Hugh, Jo and Howard can, if necessary, if they think it's necessary, interrupt and we can clarify anything. Okay, so I still orienteer sometimes as well. What's this evening all about? I stole this quote from some football coach, and I can't remember who it was. Always copy and steal excellence. The role of a coach extends beyond passing on technical skills and strategies to improve physical fitness. Coaches serve as mentors and confidants, motivators and sounding boards. Indeed, their reach often extends way beyond the confines of the sport. I always sell orienteering to schools on the grounds that it improves kids' self-esteem, it improves their resilience and their decision-making powers, among other things. The ability of the coach to understand the unique personalities of each of their athletes and their individual needs can make all the difference in their engagement with the sport. When athletes are feeling supported and valued, they're far more likely to push their boundaries and strive for excellence. Therefore, developing the soft skills is essential for coaches who want to help athletes to do their best and unlock their full potential. This is important whether you're dealing with world-class athletes and fine-tuning their performance, or your most recent recruits to the club. I always think that at a time when orienteering is struggling as a sport to attract new members, coaches have a vital role to play in transforming newcomers into keen orienteers and keeping them in the sport. And if that takes them to walk, all well and good. But just as important are clubs full of motivated participation athletes, and who knows, you might inspire others to take up coaching too. So, what are these soft skills that we are talking about? My first port of call when I was given this topic was to go to the UK Coaching Duty to Care wheel, which identifies all the various areas of knowledge deemed essential for coaching. I don't know if you can actually see that because it's actually quite small. But anyway, I'm going to zoom in on the bit that I thought was important for this evening. And here we have it. Understanding yourself, understanding the individual, and then from those two things, building the relationship between the coach and the athlete. Okay, so the first bit is to know yourself. There you are, Heidi, if you don't recognise yourself. In my experience, most new coaches find this self-reflection malarkey the most difficult thing to do. However, getting to know yourself is the first step in cultivating softer skills. I always think it's analogous to the first aid principle of ensuring that you are safe first. Otherwise, you can't help others. If you understand yourself, then it gives you a solid foundation for your relationships with others. And coaching is all about relationships. Now, everyone is unique and everyone coaches in their own way. And this is great for the sport as it gives athletes different coaching experiences, which in turn develops each one in a more rounded way. And let's face it, there's no right or wrong way to orienteer. And so there's no right or wrong way to coach orienteering. There are only more effective ways and less effective ways. And the basis for this way that we coach orienteering is our personal coaching philosophy. But it's more than just what training activities we set up for our athletes. It's the foundation that underpins everything we do as a coach. So, what is a coaching philosophy? Coaching philosophy is made up of several strands. We start off with our own values and beliefs. And these are values instilled by developmental influences, family, school, maybe even a sports coach who worked with you as a youngster. And from that, you get things like inclusivity, fairness, honesty, all those core values that underpin you as a person. And then next, we have our experiences or our influences. Okay, so I have, for example, been experienced, I've got lots of experience and been strongly influenced by Lynn Walker, who is one of our senior coach tutors, and I've learned so much from Lynn over the years that I could say she is probably a great contributory factor in my own personal coaching philosophy. By working with others and then reflecting on the outcomes of their approach or the effectiveness of something they've introduced you to, you can develop your own practice. Now, a good example here is when I was doing my teacher training and I did an Open University PGCE. So I was already teaching at the time. And so I was actually able to apply the learning that I was receiving straight away in the classroom. One of the first activities we were asked to do was reflect on a learning experience that we'd had and work out whether it was a good or bad experience and what had made it so. I learned a lot from doing that activity. So now I use this activity to start off our own coach education program. It's actually the first thing I ask all my potential coaches to do. And hopefully this passes on that piece of wisdom. Okay, so the final thing that makes up our coaching philosophy is what is important to you about the sport and the way it's played. Okay, is it enjoyment? Sportsmanship, winning, participating. What do we want our athletes to gain from participating in the sport? Life lessons as well as sporting abilities. I've heard coaching philosophy described as your true north, which is very appropriate for orienteering. It guides you when you need to formulate a plan or make a tough decision. Now, a coaching philosophy is not static. It should evolve and grow as you gain experience as a coach. John Dewey was a famous philosopher and he had this theory of reflective practice, and he did a lot of work on this. And this is the idea that people can learn from their experiences by actively questioning their beliefs and considering how to improve their methods and their knowledge. Dewey believed that reflective practice is a key process in learning and growth. And although we're all busy people, sometimes we need to take a moment after a coaching session and write down our thoughts on how it went. Learning is a social process, Dewey said, and we should gather others' views too, fellow coaches, our athletes, and feed those things and what they say forward to improve our practice. Now, in addition, the ability to understand and manage our own emotions and reactions, reactions to emotive situations, reactions to anything really, helps us to recognise the part emotions play in how we act, and also how to deal with emotions in others. Coaches who develop this high emotional intelligence, modelling pro-social behaviours and behaviour and values, could provide better support to athletes, helping them to develop as persons. So, coaches need to continually ask themselves questions, seek out opportunities to develop and learn, scrutinise their coaching style, their communication with their fellow coaches and athletes, and their emotional reactions to various situations, and reflect on how these things impact on their effectiveness. Recognising areas of strength and areas for growth enables coaches to adapt and evolve. Our coaching philosophy is a huge area, not just in sport, but in business. And I know that this has just been a very quick whiz through it, but those who are interested in learning more about coaching philosophy and maybe creating their own coaching philosophy, the best place to do it is head on over to UK Coaching or ask Mr. Google, because there is so much stuff out there. So, moving on from coaching philosophy, moving on from knowing ourselves, the next thing is understanding the individual or knowing others. And let me have a quick look. I think I've got, yes, I have, there we go. So we've looked at understanding the self, and we're now looking at understanding the individual. Coaches should invest time and effort in getting to know their athletes. I think we all know that, but know them on a personal level. And this creates a positive and supportive environment. I'll never forget that when I was a sixth former, I went to see the headmaster about something, and I felt totally let down and really quite crushed when I found out that he didn't even know my name. Now, this was in contrast to the headmaster at my previous school, which incidentally was much larger. And this headmaster had known every pupil in the school by name. And that school was a much happier and more thriving place for it. So it really means something to your athletes if you know something about them. Also, it's not just important to know what motivates them in sport, but also what motivates them in life. And what are their other hobbies and interests? And what is their background and their situation? Who are their friends? And how does all this impact on their involvement in the sport? We don't just coach the athlete, but we coach the whole person. And apart from a select few who will be world-class athletes, most people who participate in sport do it to take the lessons that they learn there into the rest of their lives. So these two things are intertwined. And it's important as coaches that we inform ourselves about issues that might affect our athletes. For example, if we're coaching teenagers, what is the impact of growth spurts, so that we can understand what they're going through and be there for them when the going gets tough. So, how do we get to know our athletes? Well, we listen to them, communicate with them. Effective communication is the cornerstone of building strong relationships with athletes. And the elements of the Chinese character, or listening, provide a useful summary of the skills of active listening. Okay, so there's all sorts of elements in here, and I like Chinese characters because it's just like a little picture, and I think most orienteers like pictures. So we use our ears, first of all. We use our ears to listen by paying attention, not just to the words that are spoken, but also to the tone and the pace and the emphasis to help us understand what that person is really saying. Reading between the lines, if you like. If the person's talking quickly, loudly, with more emphasis, we know they're engaged and interested in the topic. Conversely, if they're sounding a bit lackluster Maybe they're not engaged, but can we work out why? Is it something to do with the coaching session? Or is it maybe the situation they've left at home? We use our eyes to see, to connect with the person to whom we're listening. Firstly, to reassure them that we are listening to them and that they have our full attention, but also to check the body language of that person, to gain feedback and insights into their thoughts. Are they open, animated, expressive? If so, you know that they're confident or enthused about the subject. On the other hand, if they're more closed, is it indicating that they have less confidence, or they're less enthused, or is something else troubling? We use our mind to think as we're listening, to consider the words and the ideas that are being shared. We can choose to take an open-minded approach to what we're hearing and just suspend judgment for the time and be open to what we hear. Or we can choose to listen more critically or analytically. This depends very much on the situation. If we're gathering information, we just want to listen with our full attention. If we're trying to collaboratively solve a problem, we might actively engage our brains in what's being said. Whatever, we should take care to guard against listening to formulate a reply. Don't be afraid of pausing to think before replying. And that also goes when you pose a question. Don't be afraid of pausing and waiting for a reply. Okay. Finally, we use our heart. We use our heart to feel, and we empathise with the person that we're listening to. And as we experience the emotions that are being shared with us, we feel compassion for that person. Using our heart allows us to listen more deeply and really connect with the person we're listening to at an emotional level, and not just functional. And finally, the final bit in the middle, which ties it all together, is undivided attention. This tells us that we should focus as we listen. And we can think much quicker than a person can talk. And as a result, we often tend to anticipate what they're going to say or fill in the gaps. And sometimes that chatter is just unnecessary and it just distracts from what the person's saying. To listen effectively, we just need to calm this chatter and focus our whole attention on what the person is trying to tell us. Coaches, successful coaches, practice active listening and empathy and allow athletes to express their thoughts and their concerns openly. Now, listening is just one form of communication. And another exercise we do at Coaching Foundation level is we think about the elements of positive and effective communication. And what I've done is I've gathered an example from, oh goodness me, there's quite a lot of stuff on there and I hope you can read it. This is an example of a Jamboard that we did on one particular course. And these are all the ideas that the potential coaches came up with for elements of positive and effective communication. And as you can see, there's a whole variety of different things there. And I'll give you a chance to read through them. I'll just be quiet for a minute. Some of these things are about body language. Some of these things are about knowledge. Some of these things are about behaviours. This one's I like this one particularly for children, getting down to their level, meeting their needs, using body language, being interested. So there's lots of things there to think about and to practice. As well as our direct communication with our athletes, We should also use other resources at our disposal to put together a picture of our athlete as a whole person. For youngsters, this often means getting to know parents, siblings, etc. And most athletes, from club members right up to world class, have more than one coach or other professional involved in their training. And all these people can help us to put together a complete picture of our athlete. Okay, so we know ourselves and we know our athlete. Let's put it all together. Build the coach-athlete relationship. Okay. First of all, what I want to consider is creating the learning environment. And this is one of my favourite topics, okay? And there's a whole load of different elements that contribute to creating that learning environment. Right, here's a very happy little chap who's clearly learnt a lot in the lesson that I've just been teaching them. So, first thing we need to do before we can start coaching is build rapport. And again, this is something that I do with new coaches, is think about behaviours that we practice to build rapport. And I took a whole load of replies to our rapport building activity and popped them into this little word map thingy. And it was very interesting to see what came up. I'll give you a chance to read through all of that. So again, you can see there's a whole load of different behaviours there. But what struck me most about this is that the behaviours that come up most often are nothing special, really. They're something that everybody can do. Be friendly and smile. And again, I know this is something that new coaches find quite hard. They're concentrating so hard on getting it right that they forget to smile. It's natural as well to be nervous when you start out coaching. But if you can do, just try and remember just to give your little athletes a big friendly smile and you'll get your coaching session off to a wonderful start. And good rapport that's built through practicing all these behaviours leads to a nice comfortable coaching environment where the athlete feels safe and respected and which they look forward to coming into. Okay, so we've built our rapport with our athletes. The next thing we need to do is create an atmosphere of trust. And we do this by consistent behaviour. It's important for athletes to feel that they know their coaches and that the coaches are there for them. If you apply your coaching philosophy to everything you do, it means that your behaviour is consistent and your responses won't catch your athletes off guard. Okay, you won't suddenly turn around unexpectedly and give one of them a row when you've been Mrs. Smiley for the last few sessions. Okay, atmosphere of trust. The next thing is encourage playing. Okay, an educationalist called Vygotsky postulated that people learn within a zone of proximal development. Now that is a horrible, horrible term. And so what I've done is I've called it the learning zone. And if we look at this wee diagram here, we can see that this is your brain. Okay, and here in the middle is your comfort zone. These are things that you can do. These are things you can do on your own with confidence. Okay, out here in the periphery is the panic zone. These are things that at the moment you can't do, not with all the help in the world. But in between those two is the crucial bit for the coach. That's the learning zone, right? And that is where the student can learn. Okay, this is where the coach can set up activities that what's called scaffold the learning. And the coach provides activities with the right degree of challenge and gives the right amount of support and if necessary, breaks the skills down into manageable chunks to enable the student to progress and then expand their comfort zone. So, well, as a coach, what we need to do is we need to make our activities within that learning zone and then be there to help and give the coach, give the athlete a little leg up or a little hint or a little nudge in the right direction when they find themselves faltering. Staying with the playing, the idea of playing, make sure that coaching exercises don't turn into races. It's not about who finishes first, but it's about who gets the most out of it and who tries something new. There's a brilliant TED talk by a chap called Eduardo Brisceno, that's why I can never say his name. And it's all about performance zone versus the learning zone. And he explains that if we spend all our time in the performance zone, for example, going to events rather than coaching, then we never try anything new for fear of not doing our best. So we stick to the tried and tested formula rather than giving new methods a chance. And these new methods, who knows, might turn out to be better in the long run. And so what Eduardo says is that we should deliberately take time, slow down, rather than trying to do our best. We should try something new and try and find a new way of doing things that might in the long run make ourselves better at what it is we're trying to do. Now, having given our athletes this space to learn, the important thing is don't be too quick to step in when learners make mistakes. As a coach, make opportunities to stay out of it initially and let the athletes sort it out for themselves, because otherwise we rob athletes of that learning experience. And if they work things out for themselves or in collaboration with other athletes, then that gives them ownership of the learning and it's more likely to stick. I quite often do this deliberately in coaching exercises. I have prompt cards and I leave the prompt card so when they come back from a leg, they tick up the prompt card and they discuss the question with another athlete. And then they work it out for themselves. Some coaching exercises actually do this by design of the actual exercise itself. And I think the classic example there is the path versus terrain route choice exercise. And, you know, you give the athletes a choice, you get them to experience both ways of doing something. But the key thing then is to let them, at the end, have the time and the space to discuss what they found out and what they've learned through their experience. The other thing is you need to allow mistakes to happen and be supportive when they do. You can go one step further and lead by example as an inspiration to your athletes. Model experimenting by trying out something new yourself. So you could try a new coaching exercise and go along and say to your coaches, right chaps, we're going to try something different today. And I want you to tell me at the end what you think. And if you show humility by involving your athletes in the feedback and the reflection and the learning process, then that in itself is a good behaviour to model for your athletes. It lets them see that in fact it's good to experiment. It's good to discuss things, what went wrong, what went right. Okay. Above all, remember that in a coaching session, there's no such thing as failure. And again, I think probably quite a few of you will have seen this, that fail, according to Dr. Abdul Kalam, was his first attempt in learning. Okay. And if you take this attitude, then you get something out of every coaching session, because even if it all goes wrong, even if it just shows you what not to do, you can end on a high by looking forward to using the learning from that maybe slightly salutary experience to make it better next time. Okay, Let's move on and look at something else. Growth mindset. Now, this was one of these things that was all the rage about 10 years ago or so. I forget how long ago it all came out. And Dr. Carol Dweck wrote a book which became an international bestseller on growth mindset. But this is very, very important for the coach to remember this. Okay. Rewarding effort and intention rather than outcome teaches your athletes to welcome challenges and see them as opportunities to learn. When people push themselves out of their comfort zone, recognize it and acknowledge their contributions and their hard work. Frame praise and criticism in a constructive way that helps them to see how their efforts lead to success. I've got some classic things here, and this is some stuff I found on the internet about growth mindset. So rather than praising the person, praise what they've done. I'll just give you a chance to read that. Express confidence in your athlete's abilities. Use the power of yet to foster the mindset that improvement is a process and not a destination. So if someone tells you they can't do something, just add yet, and it makes all the difference. I can't aim off. No, you can't aim off yet. By instilling belief and confidence, and that with sufficient effort they can achieve, coaches can inspire athletes to exceed their perceived limitations. This approach can lead to remarkable achievements and a lasting impact on athletes' lives beyond the sport as well as in it. Okay, let me see what I got to now. Okay, I think we need to go on to the next one. Okay, so we've encouraged play, growth mindset, meet their needs. Okay, involve them in goal setting. Now, coaching goes beyond imposing your standards and your vision of the athlete's ideal journey. Instead, it fosters a collaborative environment where athletes have a say in that journey. You need to seek their input where they'd like to go next. Even with youngsters, I provide meaningful and challenging activities tailored to their needs. Think back to our learning zone. Everyone's learning zone is different, and it requires you as a coach to find out where that learning zone is. Okay, and you do that by talking to your athletes and asking them. When the athletes feel actively involved in setting goals and defining their own paths, they become much more invested in the process. And also, this shared direction aligns the coach's objectives with the athlete's aspirations. And that in itself creates a strong sense of purpose and teamwork. And working closely together like this, coaches are able to then support the athlete's own journey. And again, this takes us back to knowing your athlete's motivations and whys. And you can see that all these things that I'm saying are all starting to join up. The next thing I want to talk about is inclusivity. It's really important as coaches that we make everyone feel important and worthy of attention and part of the team. And we don't have teams as such in orienteering, but we have a club squad. You know, we want to do well, we want to win the Jamie Stevenson, whatever it happens to be. And there's increasing focus on inclusivity in sport. And it doesn't just mean minority groups, but those for whatever reason struggle to fit in. And again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about coaches modelling pro-social behaviour. I remember being delighted to discover that my son's musical theatre class had several disabled youngsters who were all given parts within their capabilities. But the important thing was not just the joy on that occasion, but the knock-on effect of this was that all the kids in that class grew to value everyone's contributions. And they continue to support each other to this day. And I think that's a life lesson well learned. It's important also for coaching to be social as well as achieving. Now, I don't know if Maslow has been debunked, or quite a lot of my pet educational theories have been debunked, but I always find going back to this simple triangle, Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, is quite revealing. If we look at the triangle, beyond our basic physiological needs and our basic safety needs, the next thing up the pyramid is social belonging. And that comes below esteem. So winning is up here in esteem. Social belonging supports that. So it's far more important for kids to feel, and indeed adult athletes as well, a lot of these things go for adults too. So that the social thing actually underpins the esteem thing, and it's more important than the winning. When I first took on this job, there was much wringing of hands over the dropout rate, particularly amongst teenage girls. So I wrote to several of the young women I knew in the sport at the time and asked them why they thought this was an issue. And one of the overwhelming reasons was that because they had started off in a group, and as other members of their peer group drifted away, the sport became far less fun for them. So for the coach, that means making sure that coaching sessions are social as well as about improving skills. Okay, moving on then. Mindfulness and mental skills training. I've just sort of tacked this on here really, because it's not really part of creating the learning environment, but I think it's an important thing to consider. Introducing mindfulness and mental skills training into coaching programs can enhance athletes' mental resilience and their emotional well-being. If we as coaches recognise the psychological and emotional needs of our athletes, we can make a crucial difference to their development. All athletes or people suffer from anxiety and self-doubt, and these are just some of the challenges athletes face throughout their careers, and not only performance athletes. For example, youngsters going through puberty or school exams have got a lot to contend with. And coaches who keep themselves informed about the other things that are going on in their athletes' lives can provide support and guidance and resources to help athletes navigate these challenges. And these also, allow us to make allowances for people and empathise with them. And again, this brings back the idea of emotional intelligence, and it's important in the coach-athlete relationship. And talking of importance, I think I have the most important thing until last: fun. Keep it all in perspective. Even the most serious athletes take part in sport because they enjoy it or they're passionate about it. So as a coach, you need to feed their passion. Games, variety, realistic expectations keep people in that learning zone. And social opportunities are key to enjoyment. A Guardian article I found whilst I was reading around this topic, Kath Bishop, who's a former Olympic rower, writes that alarmed by an increasing emphasis on winning at all cost, Sports England launched a national campaign in 2023. And it's called Play Their Way. And the idea of this campaign was to put children's enjoyment at the heart of all sport and physical activity. A youth sport trust report from that year identified that our children are unhealthier, unhappier, and more distracted than ever, and desperately in need of regular activity to help them with all aspects of their physical, mental, and emotional development. So many youngsters are turned away or turned off sport by this overriding predominance of talent identification, trialling and selection processes at ever younger ages. There's one really important principle behind the work of the passionate, forward-thinking coaches and educators and advocates of the Children's Coaching Collaborative, who sit at the heart of this Play Their Way campaign. They focus on putting the child's voice first. So, in summary, what these soft skills allow us to do is to create an athlete-centered coaching program, build strong relationships with our athletes, and support their needs and their goals. What we need to do is make time for individuals, get to know them, their motivation, their barriers, their hopes, their fears. Develop the whole person and not just the sports person. And finally, put the needs of the athlete before the needs of the sport and keep it fun. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that some of that has resonated with you, and I hope that you found it interesting.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was absolutely brilliant. I was partially taking notes and then realizing that I'm going to have very ready access to a video copy as well, so I could do the other half of my note taking as well at a later date. That was really enjoyable. Now we can open the floor to any questions that we do have. We can pop those into the chat or the Q&A, or if you'd like to, you can use the raise hand function at the top. And I'm happy to call upon you to unmute your microphone and ask any questions.
Stunned silence, eh?
Nicola, you've saved us from the stunned silence.
I was typing it in, but it's just a point about inclusivity, Suzanne, and people with neurodiversity, and some of those youngsters can be quite disruptive to the group. I've got a recent issue with that, and can destroy the session in some ways for the others who want to focus. And so I just wondered, when you're thinking about that athlete centre, and because when you've got a group, it's hard to deal with that individual and everything else that's going on in the rest of the group feeling upset as well. So I just wonder, from your experience, because I think it's important that people who are from different, different aspects of neurodiversity, who might have behaviour problems that come with that, are able to get involved in orienteering, because I think it could help in sometimes, and other sports as well. So I just wondered how you advise to deal with that situation, because you're trying to deal with a group and this individual who's quite disruptive.
Yeah, I know, it's difficult. Okay, so the first thing to say is there are so many different aspects of neurodiversity, it's quite difficult to generalise. I found my own son is neurodiverse, but he's well, we won't go there, but so I understand the problem. One thing that I find is quite often neurodiverse kids are very keen to hang around the coach and help out and to draw attention to themselves. One thing you can do is give them little jobs. That really helps because it makes them feel important. But more importantly, it focuses their attention away from seeking attention for themselves. And so if you can find something that they can do, like put the cones out or tidy the cones up or hand out the maps, it makes them feel important, and it stops that, because the disruptive behaviour, and this goes for children, all children, not just neurodiverse children, is often an attention-seeking thing, and I think probably that funneling that energy that they have into doing something constructive and doing something that they see as important, and that you make them feel important, is certainly one tack that I would use. I think it's actually quite difficult to say without meeting the individual child, but something I think sometimes you actually do need to give them a bit more attention, particularly initially, because it's not that if you give them more attention, they'll want even more attention. Sometimes if you give them the attention that they crave, then that then puts them back into their, into their well-behaved mode. I hope that helps. So, sorry, that's a bit of a vague answer, but without meeting the individual child, it's quite difficult to do it.
I think you're right. I think it's yeah, I think it's that thing that you said about learning for the coach about how to deal with almost like difficult situations, when they arise, and take the learning. So I was just trying to see just really where your thoughts were on that, and I don't think it's any different from what I've been trying, to be honest.
It's a very good question.
I had been really trying positive reinforcement of good behaviour and things like that, and so this kind of thing. So it might just be I just have to keep trying some slightly different things.
Sometimes find an activity that person will happily do on their own, and just put them to do something on their own while you deal with the rest of the group. And then if you make it a little routine, because again, often neurodiverse children like routine. So if you say to them, like, I'm going to give you this to do while I get everyone else going, and then I'm going to come and give you some attention, and once they know that that's what will happen, then they maybe won't be so demanding. So that's another thing you could try.
Thank you.
No worries.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nicola. Do we have any more questions, possibly with a hand raise? I'll just quickly check the Q&A. But you might be getting off a little bit lightly here by all accounts.
Yeah, well, there's quite a lot to take in there, I'm afraid.
I think that it's always the best way, that there's an awful lot of information, and anybody who does wake up in the night and think, oh, I should have asked that question, I'll be more than happy to collect those and get those over as well. I can see. Oh, I saw Howard posted a discussion, but he's asking for questions. I think in that case, I can start to wrap up, and if any more questions come in, then I can quickly divert again. So a huge thank you again, Suzanne, for such a brilliant session. As we've all said, a lot to take in, but also a lot of really good, high quality information, and it's going to give everybody, I think, a lot to think about, and also a lot to take back to clubs, orienteering, and even beyond as well, because coaching the people is always coaching people. And just to quickly remind everybody, this has been recorded and will be uploaded, so you can go back to it whenever you need, as well as all the other development conference sessions. They're all a resource, and it's brilliant that we can have access to them as and when we need. I will pop in the chat the link to the YouTube playlist and the YouTube channel, and that'll have all the sessions in thus far. Just as a quick little bit of advertisement, we have another session taking place tomorrow, and that will be the Find Your Way project review. Our very own Kay Hawke will be discussing the great work that we did with the Find Your Way project, and that also includes from the independent assessments as well that were completed, all the project outcomes, getting more people outside orienteering, and in different ways than the traditional way of finding club as well. A huge thank you again, Suzanne. Thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon for another session. Thank you very much.